Hamed's presentation. All right. Well, thank you all so much for being here. I wanted to welcome everyone to our first session of the fall 2024 program for the Virtual Inter-University Symposium on Infrastructure Management. For those of you who are new to VISIM, it is a virtual symposium hosted by Professor Pablo Durango-Cohen here at Northwestern University. And today, Hamed Mehranfar will be presenting their work. The presentation should be about 20 minutes long, after which we will take questions from the audience. But in today's session, there's only one presentation, so it may go slightly longer, and we can have a little more flexibility on the amount of questions and the length of the presentation. Please feel free to speak your questions or send them in using the chat feature on the meeting. And I would like to point out again that the meeting is being recorded and will be made available shortly after. Thank you all so much for attending. And to give Hamed a short introduction, Hamed Mehranfar is a doctoral candidate in the field of infrastructure management in the chair of infrastructure management at ETH Zurich. He graduated with a master's degree in railway transportation engineering from Iran University of Science and Technology and a bachelor's in industrial engineering from Ferdowsi University of Mashhad. His current focus is on determining optimal intervention programs for the railway networks with a close collaboration with Swiss Federal Railways. Hamed, please feel free to take it away.
Thanks a lot, Gal. Yeah, so it's been great to be here. I have presented here, I guess, last year as well, or the year before. It was like a first work package that I developed, but now basically I'm towards the end of my PhD. So here is the last part of my doctoral thesis, basically, and I'm happy to share with you. So just share the screen. Okay. I don't know how to get rid of. Do you see this ribbon on top, or it's only me? Okay. Right.
I don't see any ribbon.
Okay, perfect. All right. So yeah, I picked this title as digital methodology for determining optimal component level integration programs. And just first thing, what these things mean. So we call it digital methodology because the goal is that it will be implemented in the future generation of intervention planning process where you have like different digital tool, you have all of these decision making visible on, for example, something like Beam or any digital medium. And here we call intervention programs, which is different from intervention strategies. So the difference is that strategy is basically instruction when you say, okay, I have the duration of each one of my asset or each one of my components. So asset, something like bridges, and component is something like the pier of that bridge or abutment or any other these kind of things that they have different functionality. And so these kind of things we have programs tells us, okay, when the duration reaches to certain degree, we do certain action. And these are independent from, usually, is independent from the duration or instruction of any other component or any other asset. Whereas here, programs mean that when you include different kind of actions together and say, okay, if I need to rehabilitate the pier of this bridge, if I have a track somewhere else, does it make sense if we do these things together, or if this should be done differently in different time or something like that? So these kind of things, like each program is a bundle of multiple intervention action on different asset or component. Each here, you can see the component. So first this to be clear, because later on we get back to this. To just give you a short overview of what is happening in intervention planning process in Swiss federal railways. Here is a very abstract version of the intervention planning process, where each basically decision points, you can put them in different blocks, as you can see here in different colors, which roughly starts 20, 25 years ahead of the execution time. And so we have different focus because it's a group of two people, and each one of us work in these kind of blocks and try to find ways to improve this intervention planning process. And the focus of this work that I will present today is on this part, when we know more or less we have the information coming from engineering offices. So we know the extent of interventions, we know how much do they cost, and how long do they take, and these kind of things. And now the task is that to be how to put these things together and make sequencing of them. So currently what they do is that they have this information, they see these things, and then they sit together with different engineers from different departments, and then they make decision, okay, it makes sense, for example, if I have a bridge here, if I have switch over there, does that make sense if we do these things at the same time in order to bring more availability to the system? And it's rather iterative, and it requires a lot of expertise about specifics of each basically asset. And the result, although it's good, might not be very uh, like high standard. Or, I mean, it's high standard, but might not be the optimal decisions. So here we wanted to develop this methodology to help them having more informed decisions. So the suggestion would be something like this. So you see the optimal composition, and you see, okay, at this point, I need to do this thing. And I mean, it's on purpose, I put it below so that you can see how you situate it over time. Uh, Different reads can be done from this thing, and depending on the stakeholder. For example, if you are a higher level manager, you might just want to know the spatial temporal overview of this intervention. You can zoom more in, see, okay, here is between this station, this kind of intervention needs to be done. Or you can even zoom more in and have the overlaid with the timetable, and then see, okay, where are my closure, what are the services here, how they impact this. So we wanted to provide these things as efficiently as possible so that this kind of decision can be made fast. So to give you a sense of what kind of information these decision makers deal with, is that these are, for example, result of the analysis from engineering offices. So for example, they can say, okay, for this bridge, for its abutment, we need a rehabilitation that takes roughly 2 weeks, of which for 1 week it impacts traffic, and it more or less costs this much. So you have these things, you know where these things are located, and this kind of decision can make this. So we wanted to be as close as possible to the way this manager think, and we wanted to make our cost function depending on that. So we consider our cost as owner cost, basically the intervention cost for the material crew, traffic management costs for establishing the rerouting or shuttle buses, and traffic disruption costs that we counted as added travel. And we have the benefit in terms of reduced failure risk. So we consider the level of failure risk at the time of execution compared to the worst possible failure risk that each one of assets can have. And of course, we consider the saving from intervention grouping, because if you do intervention on components of the same type, usually there is a economy of scale, so we can share those fixed costs between these things. So of course, we have some consideration that we should have when we make a decision. We call them here interdependencies. So we consider four type of interdependency, but here in the picture, you can see three of them. So one we call economical dependency, which has to do with basically the proximity of things. So if you have intervention on this switch and on this switch, if they are in different year, you say, okay, since they are next to each other, close to each other, it makes sense to group them together and do the intervention on them. Sometimes you have to do it together. For example, we call it structural dependency. For example, if you need to replace the deck of this bridge, you also have to consider replacement of the track on top of it. So this thing is inevitable. So it might not reduce the cost, but it has to be done. And this intervention interdependency that we call topological. So imagine again, if we have this bridge closed and this is, for example, dead end, this one, although it can provide service, it is functional, but if there is intervention on this within the same planning period, say, okay, it makes sense to also do it when this is closed in order to have more availability to the service overall. And another dependency that we consider is called stochastic dependency, which has to do with deterioration of the assets over time. And for bridges, usually assets deteriorate independently, and the deterioration usually do not have that much of impact on the deterioration of other ones. But for track, we consider the dependency in the deterioration. So, for example, if the subgrade is deteriorated, we consider acceleration to the deterioration speed of the other component on top of that, to just make it a bit more close to reality. And of course, we consider the available possession windows and the budget constraint. So these are the information that we need when we want to determine these intervention programs. So we need to know the list of intervention and their possession windows requirement and cost, which comes from the engineering offices. We need to know the evolution of the failure risk over time, that we basically tie this evolution of the failure risk to the deterioration of the components. So the more the components are deteriorated, the higher the chance of the failure. And we need to know the structure of our network in order to locate them and make these interdependencies. And also we need to know the availability of our possession time and different type of closure if you want to close certain part of the network or some bigger chunk of that network, and also the resource. So here is the way we did that. So for example, we have a rehabilitation of the rails here, and we have the rehabilitation of sleepers here. So we consider assignment graph for making these intervention programs. So say each intervention, we assume that they can be either done individually or within a group if they are near each other. So for example, for this one, it can be, so this is the binary arc. So if it is 1, it means that this connection is established. If it is 0, it means this is not established. So we say this is 1, so this intervention is selected and it goes to the sink if it is being done individually. However, if they want to be grouped with the other one, with the sleeper, says, okay, this is 1, this is 1, this is 1, so this chain is activated, so these two are selected to be done within the group. Similarly, for structural dependency, that here we consider these two, you say, okay, if this needs to be activated, it cannot be started because there is no incoming from source. It cannot be started without the start of the before. So if you want to replace this part, you have to also dig out this ballast and do the intervention. So similar here as well. So these ones, when they are activated, they are selected, they activate a counterpart node in the other layer that we call the network layer, basically. And this takes the duration of the intervention into account. So we said, okay, this went to this went to this group. So the maximum duration will be the time of this group node. Similarly here, and then you say, okay, for example, in this case, when we do the intervention in the abutment, and also we do the intervention on top of this bridge, they can be done more or less at the same time. So we say their group can be merged together to form a bigger group. And we consider the saving in time with this epsilon here. And they can be assigned later on. They will be assigned to the different type of possession time that we have, and it goes through everything and then makes the whole loop. And that's the way we turn these things. So if we do that for a small scale network, we get something busy like this. And to show the usefulness of this method, we compare the situation when you consider all of these interdependency with situation that you have zero of this interdependency, which basically is a very exaggerated version of where all of these infrastructure managers are negligent. So they don't see any of these interdependencies. Say, okay, we have to do all of these intervention separately. So of course they consider some of them, but we just wanted to show these basically extreme. So when we consider for one planning period between year 6 and 10, we saw, as we expected, we saw that when we consider the interdependency between intervention, we see a reduction in the possession time requirement during the week, which is the more expensive type of possession window in favor of having more on the night shift and weekends. Similarly, for the other planning period that we have 11 to 15, we also saw this drop in more expensive possession windows in favor of having more on the cheaper possession. And then consider also the cost and net benefit. We also saw in both of this planning period reduction basically in cost and improvement in the total benefit, which made us very happy. So yeah, just to conclude, this methodology is versatile. You can have this same construction for any other network. However, it could be a bit more tricky. For example, for the road, you need to consider, for example, traffic model for the user costs and stuff like that, which is easier now if you consider rail because you have basically timetable and then you can see how it's being done. And the most important part is that this model can consider the interdependency between these component level interventions. It can consider the failure risk and different type of possession window to establish the optimal trade-off between these costs and benefits within different planning periods. And that was basically my presentation. Thank you very much. And I'm eager to hear your feedback, comment, question. Thanks.
Yes, thank you so much for the presentation. If anyone has any questions they want to give, please feel free to speak them or put them in the chat and I will read them.
I have two questions, but I wanted to let others ask first if they have other questions. Okay, so let me ask you. So I really like it. I love the network that you constructed to capture these interdependencies. I think it's really clever, really, really nice. I don't know that you put the references for your papers yet, but I think that this looks this looks great. So the question that I have, and so it's a little bit of a the first question is a little bit of a clarifying question. And so this is you talked about capturing economies of scale, right? And so, for example,
Yes.
like some sort of fixed cost, right? And then the variable cost when you would like kind of consider multiple repairing multiple components in the same period. And
Yeah.
so I think that in terms of capturing but the budget or other resources as economic dependencies, I can see that basically in the network that you constructed, you might essentially introduce capacity variables. But can you describe a little bit how you would capture these economies of scale? I think that this one, um, I couldn't imagine the way you did it in your network construction, and you did mention it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so it's a bit tricky and it might not be the best way to do it, but that's the way I did it. So basically, we consider the economy of scale for basically economical interdependency. And you see, we have attributes on each arc. So this arc, if it is selected, it has a certain benefit and cost associated.
So
So
those would
for
be the
example,
variable items, right?
yes. So
Okay.
I mean, we consider here, I said the graph is like that, but in the model, we consider the net benefit of each one of them. So imagine net benefit of executing this V1 is 10 or V2 as well. Imagine now simply. So if this is selected, they are 10. However, if they are both selected, so together is 20, but if they are selected together, it will be something, say, 17. And for that, we have this one. So if this is selected, the net benefit associated with that is minus 3. So it will be 10 minus 3, something like that. So it will be 17 when it goes to the end. So we
Okay.
capture it like that.
And so what if you had a third component that would also be under that fixed cost?
Yeah, I mean, similarly, so the ones that near each other of for example, the ones that associated with the track,
Uh-huh.
it will be like that. So it will deduct from that cost. So it's like 10, 7, 7, and then instead of 30, it would be 24.
I see. I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was very clever. And then my other question, which is related to this graph, is how are you capturing how are you capturing the temporal trade-offs? I mean, so I see this in terms of scheduling in a given period and capturing those interdependencies. But you also told us a little, and I mean, when selecting the schedules for each component, this is inherently time-based. And so where are these temporal trade-offs captured out of curiosity?
Uh, I'm not sure if I get the question right, but the way we consider like you mean the timing of the intervention or what do you mean by that?
Yeah. And so the thing is, in some sense, what you're trading off, right, is, for example, like because of the interdependencies, it might be worthwhile to repair a component, even though on its own, the optimal schedule might dictate that we only want to repair it in 1 or 2 years. And so, in some sense, this graph needs to capture these temporal trade-offs of like kind of doing this work now because the interdependencies justify it as opposed to postponing it, which is what we would do if we were considering that component independently.
Yeah, so we capture that in the cost of the internet, like the user cost. So if you have them together, you just block one position time. Whereas if you have it separately, you have two position time. So and then it goes to the like the constraint that we have on the time. So it would be calculated in that sense.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you, Hamed. As I said, I think that I really like the approach, and I look forward to reading your papers
Thank you very much.
in the near
Actually, we
future.
submitted to Journal of Infrastructure Systems, and we got back the feedback. So by the end of the month, I have to send their revision. So yeah, hopefully it gets through.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Yeah. Sorry I don't know if other students and others have questions.
Hamid, I think it was the previous slide, it was mentioning the different types of interdependencies. And my first thought was that the economical interdependencies and the topological interdependencies could be the same or could be very similar. And I was
Yes.
wondering if that became an issue, or is that slide you were just showing saying that they're kind of two different things, where one's component level and one's group level?
No, that's an excellent question, actually. So the thing is that it might look the same, but and this kind of the same. However, the thing is that for here, economical dependency, we only define them for component that associated with the asset of same type. So for example, if you have switch here,
Mhm.
you should have another switch, because usually when the works are being done together, you cannot, for example, assign the group that they are doing the maintenance of a bridge the same people doing the switch, because they are different kind of people, so it's a different cost. That's why in the economical dependency, we consider the reduction in the fixed cost. However, in the topological dependency, we only have the reduction in the user cost, because it has to do with the time that is required.
Thank you. That's super helpful.
Thanks.
Just one more opportunity. If there are any additional questions, please feel free to ask. If not, I want to thank everyone for joining again. Our next session is November 1st at the same time, also on a Friday, and we do have two presentations already scheduled for that session. So thank you all, and I hope to see you again soon. And thank you so much, Hamed, for the presentation.
Thank you,
It was a
Hamed.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your feedback. Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.